Gary, treasurer's report.
You're muted, Gary. There you go.
Yeah. I know. I was on the wrong screen though. When I hit the space bar, things happened that I wasn't expecting. Anyway, we're solvent. We're solvent. We're still looking into why the state of New York hasn't cashed a check yet, but we have the experts working on that.
You'd
How
think
long
the
was the
state would
check
want
So
the
in?
you
money.
know,
How long was the check in, Gary?
Oh, I think
about 2 months, right?
yeah. From
All right, are we claiming a COVID issue here where we haven't had office personnel in to do that and yada, yada, yada?
The people who do our taxes suggested that too.
Yeah, well, okay. That's a little thin, but all right.
They didn't wait on taking my money.
Yeah. Well, that's different.
Tom with the big coin over there. Of course they didn't wait.
Is that it, Gary?
Yeah, that's it. That's
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Would like to make a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Any? Second?
George Brown,
George?
second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Nay. Moving on. Gary, frequency coordination and certification.
Oh, we got a request from BAE Systems Information and Electronic Systems Integration Incorporated
Mhm.
for a project they're going to be working on in the Rome area.
Mhm.
They're doing some experiments at about 26 megahertz, and I don't see that as affecting anyone.
No.
Actually, they sent this to us after having sent it to Fred Lass, who said that Rome isn't really in his area.
Okay.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's it on that. And
I thought Fred Lass was nationwide. Come on. Yeah, no, I can understand that, but BAE 26 megahertz, did you say? I'm sorry.
I did.
Yeah, I don't. Well, what would be there?
I'm sorry.
What would be in that range? I mean, I get that BAE probably wants to do some testing there, but I don't see any issue.
No. If you want to see their application, I can scan and
No, that's okay. BAE is a huge system defense contractor, so I don't
yeah.
anticipate
And there's your
any
answer.
concerns here. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I'd ask my brother-in-law who works over at the lab, but he'd probably have to kill me after he told me. So
In Rome?
yeah,
Oh, that's
he
great.
doesn't talk about anything going on there.
We got to take this offline, okay? We can't bring this up at the, Thanksgiving Day dinner or anything.
Okay, nothing on certification.
Okay.
Okay. All righty. Does anybody have any other old business? If not, we'll get into new business. I'd like to introduce Anna Marie Mccabe, our newest member of Chapter 22. She's the IT specialist at WKTV. Welcome, Anna Marie.
Thank you. And I work
She's
for
attended
Tom.
a few meetings in the past.
It's a golf clap, by the way.
I'm sorry for that.
I'm golf clapping you in.
That's okay.
You work with Tom?
I work for Tom.
Well, we won't hold that against you.
Well, congratulations on that. Very good.
Yeah, congratulations. Welcome.
Seriously.
Welcome.
That's very nice.
And John, thank you for getting back to me today. John Palma is going to put together something for us for June. Bob Windsor from Grass Valley will present. John, do you want to say anything about it, or?
Well, I mean, we're heavy into the SDI migration to IP infrastructure. I don't know too many stations on a local level that are well, A, interested in doing it right now, but hey, you know, in the next couple of years, we really have to start thinking this way. So when Tom sent out the message today, I was like, okay, well, what can we really highlight here that's not going to be terribly mind-blowing? And this is what we came up with. So in next month's presentation, I'll have Bob Windsor, who's a longtime veteran in routing overall, and he pick a router and he's worked on it. And we're going to move from SDI into IP. So that's all. Lots of comments.
Okay.
Okay.
I was
That's
gonna say
Wednesday,
something,
June
but-
16th.
It seems
Mark
like
your
it.
calendars. I will. And John, as soon as I get, you know, the synopsis and
Yeah.
bio and
The agenda is
I'll
going to
get the
be
word out to everybody as I usually do.
great. Thanks, Tom. The agenda will be concise. I'm going to try to keep them to, you know, under 682 slides. And we'll just kidding. No,
Was I supposed to
it'll,
have under 682 slides? Because I definitely have over 682 slides.
do you? Well,
Yeah.
you better trim a little bit. As one of my old bosses used to say, you might want to touch that up a little bit. So no. It'll be as informative as we can make it without being salesy.
Good. Okay. And then we'll search for presenters for July and August, July 21st, August 18th. Before I move on, I want to mention too, I'm sure everybody got the email, in case you didn't see it, our SBE certification director, Megan Clapp, has been named SBE fellow.
Excellent.
Megan has been at the SBE national office for almost 18 years, has been certification director for the past 15 years. And she's been great at what she does, and I think it's a great honor for her. If you get a chance, drop her an email and congratulate her on becoming a fellow.
That's awesome.
And for those that don't know, Chris Emley, SBE General Counsel, will be retiring at the end of the year after 42 years of service to SBE. I sat in on the Washington, D.C. chapter meeting last week, and he was the presenter, and he announced it to them at that meeting that he won't be presenting annually to them anymore, and they were very disappointed. But SBE is going to begin a search for a replacement. His most recent work has been with spectrum allocation, the 2 gig, 7 gig, and UHF wireless microphone bands, providing coordination efforts and comments to the FCC regarding interference to broadcasters in these bands. I think it's going to be very difficult to replace him. He's done such a great job where he is in working to head off a lot of the issues that broadcasters face in the spectrum crunch, and he's going to be missed for sure. And I think National's got their work cut out to replace him. So again, if you get a chance, feel free to shoot him an email and congratulate him on 42 years and finally getting a chance to enjoy his retirement. Move on here. These are notes from our National Executive Director, Jim Ragsdale. I'm not going to read everything. You can kind of skim through it. A lot of the stuff's available on the national website. It's recruit a member time. If you'd like to recruit a member, go to the membership drive portion at the SBE website. The SBE Awards program is still waiting nominations for chapter and individual awards. You can check that on the national website, and the SBE financial statements are available on their website. Upcoming webinars, tomorrow, I believe, May 20th, part 5 of IP networking, cybersecurity principles and concepts. And then coming up on May 27th, next week, it's the ANSI TIA 222H standard and broadcast tower maintenance. I think we're still in the grace period for SBE membership renewal. So if you didn't get yours in by April 1st, you still have time, but I wouldn't wait much longer. You can contact Scott Jones by phone or by email. And if you want to become SBE certified, you'd like to take an exam, The next exam dates are August 6th through 16th for local exams. And that has to be submitted, your application has to be submitted by June 11th. And you can contact Megan Clapp by phone or by email to arrange that. And again, as we mentioned last week, we have an invite from Dan Ryson at Chapter 37, the Washington, D.C. chapter, on June 1st, 6:30 p.m. Dick Burton, the last surviving member of the National Stereophonic Radio Committee that evaluated systems developed by Zenith and G, will do the presentation. They're inviting many chapters from around the country. They're going to open up their Zoom meeting to probably more than 100. They're going to have to pay a one-time fee for that, but they want to get as many people involved as they can, and there'll be a lot of open discussion there. So feel free to go to SBE37.org. There's a link there to register for that meeting. I will not be in that one. It's my wife's birthday, and I
Good
don't
choice.
think I'll be sitting in an SBE meeting that night, or I'll be sleeping alone. So update on the expo. Holiday in Liverpool's holding the September 28th, September 29th, 2022 dates. SBE National Board met on May 10th, and they agreed they would hold their fall 2022 meetings at our expo. So now we can move ahead and work out a contract with Holiday Inn for the space we require for that. I've got the space that was reserved for the 2020 show that National was going to attend before we canceled. I'm going to get that over to Jim Ragsdale because all that was arranged by John Porey. And I'll make sure that Jim's okay with it before I have Holiday Inn come up with a final contract. I have no idea what the rates are going to be, if they're going to jack things up. Because
You're starting to sound like R2D2.
Okay. Thank you, Spectrum. Any better? No?
No.
No. Okay, I'll come back. Let me try. Sources. Yeah, we got it. I'll be right back.
Okay, quick. While he's gone, everybody change your name.
I was gonna say, if you guys want, I can just kind of tell you that for my presentation today, we're gonna talk about some, because Tom already knows, we already talked about it. We're gonna talk about some radio, where radio is going with the cloud. Talking about some of these advanced hybrid workflows and studio setups as well. I got probably around, I can always talk in the next number of minutes. So I try to budget around 40 minutes or so with a couple minutes of questions. So if you do have any questions, feel free to chime in when we talk about it, but I got a presentation and all that stuff to show you. So just so you know, that's kind of my outline, my timeline.
Here he comes.
How's that?
That's
Much better.
Okay. Share again. All right. You know, one of my son's friends, his house burned down last week. He's living with his parents, and they have a terrible internet connection. They're close to where I live, and they have Spectrum. And he has to work from home, and he can't do it from there. So he's been working on my son's back porch on his apartment in Utica. Got all the Spectrum. So let me minimize some stuff here. Okay, so we're going to get a contract together as soon as Jim Ragsdale signs off on the space requirements they need for the national meetings, and hopefully Holiday Inn's not going to jack our rates up too much. I expect some increase, especially in food. Hopefully they aren't going to hit us for the space, but they may want to make up lost revenue and hit us. I don't know. Once all of that's done and signed, then we'll come up with rates for booths. Hopefully we can keep them where they were in 2019, 2020, the proposed rates then. We'll keep you posted. What else do I have? I'm going to try to do an officers meeting for the chapter sometime in June. Vinny, Gary, Kevin, I'll keep you posted. I'll come up with a date that's convenient to all of you and just go over some things and make sure we're good on Expo and all of that. Does anybody else have any other new business they'd like to discuss? Anything going on in your world that you want to discuss with chapter members? Quiet group tonight. Everybody just wants to get done. Okay. That's the case. I'll make a motion to close the business meeting for chapter 22.
I'm sorry. Forgive me. What did I miss? Did the presentation not occur or?
No, I'm closing the business portion of the meeting.
Oh, business portion. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Who would like to second that?
So moved or seconded.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
And in favor. All right. Great.
All right.
you.
Opposed? Say nay. I didn't think anybody would be. Okay, that's that. And now we'll move on to Nathan, and can
It's me.
start his presentation as soon as I stop my share.
Yep.
Now you can share.
Everybody should see this, right? Good. Everybody can see that, hear me?
Yes,
All
I
good?
see it. Yep.
Awesome.
If everybody
all
can mute
good.
their
Thank-
mics until they need to ask a question, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All good.
So yes, just so you guys know, I do this all the time anyway. So I'm going to put my chat up here. So if you have any questions for me, I got the chat open. If you want to do the hand raise or something like that in Zoom, I'll keep my eye on the side of the screen as well. Everybody can hear me okay? I think sounds all right. Awesome. Great. So yeah, as we're saying here, Tom, when you jumped off, I gave a quick little 2-second heads up. So what I have is, somewhere between 40 minutes of presentation to talk about, and I'll showcase some Zeta hybrid configurations about how it applies to RCS and the radio world. And if you have any questions or if you want to see something, feel free to raise your hand or comment or all of that good stuff, and I'll be able to answer them for you too in real time. So the overall concept here is we're going to talk about is how we're kind of talking about traditional radio setups, where we are right now with kind of a hybrid. And then, of course, we're looking to the future, which, of course, is all cloud-based radio. So I'm Nate Mumford. I'm the Director of Sales Engineering here at RCS. You might know some of our products. We have Zetta is our latest and greatest automation software. G Selector is our latest and greatest music scheduling software. You might hear also NextGen in the mix as well. That's our previous automation software, or any kind of the Selector version 12s, the DOS. That's all us as well. In our suite of products, we also have Revma. That is our content delivery network, and Acquira, which is our traffic software as well. But for today, we're really kind of talk about more of the automation side, because that's the brawn of the operation and how that's configured. So just very briefly over here, let me show you a little timestamp, okay? So very briefly, let's just talk about kind of what Zeta brings to the table in regards to its current UI, its layout, things that it can do right now. And this will make more sense because we're taking the traditional radio studio setup and we're kind of building what I've called these compounded remote hybrid workflows, right? Starting with this traditional setup and applying some hybrid workflows, and of course, taking that and making it remote. So in regards to Zeta in the UI, as you can see here, we have a very, very flexible UI interface. The biggest thing there is we utilize Microsoft SQL, and we have a Microsoft SQL in the background as well. But we also have this, we kind of call it a detached play button in Zeta. What that detached play button means is that we have essentially, Zeta has some services that run in the background, either on your standalone machine or your server in the rack room, or a sequencer server also in the rack room. And the idea there is we have essentially, it's the UI experience, right? We have the Zeta UI, then we also have a communication layer, and then we have the services, who's actually playing, who's recording, who's firing the GPIOs and stuff like that. And all of those are tied to our SQL server. And what that does is it really frees up the UI. So if we close it, that's totally fine. We're not off the air, just the UI is closed. We have multiple studios. We can control the on-air from multiple studios if we wanted to. Again, with the attached play button, just gives a little more flexibility in how it's a Zeta UI versus the actual server that's performing all of those operations. And then, of course, we have a very robust audio engine. Just so you know, we have essentially, we can input MP3 wave AAC files. We can do that automatically with an auto load. One of the things I've been telling users throughout all of COVID is, working smarter, not harder, but also incorporating these remote workflows, right? So for example, create an auto load folder for a destination. In Zeta, we have a tool we perform a marks analysis. A marks analysis, essentially, you can automatically set the trim in, the trim out, and the segue point if you wanted to automatically. All throughout Zeta, we have non-destructive stretch and squeeze for playouts. We also have some timed fillers as well, time-filled positions, as well as time-filled spot block positions as well. And then we take all of this, we also have station-specific normalization. So when you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen, you have a lot of users who are now working remotely, doing many different type of tasks. The idea is that we want to streamline and automate some of these functionalities while keeping something consistent as an on-air product. So again, just to review, I can go and do an auto load, so I can save an asset in a location that Zeta sees. It automatically ingests that asset. It will set the trim in, the trim out, the segue points. It's going to then save it as your default audio format, whatever that is. So it could be just, again, WAV or AAC, your choice. And then from there, we have not only is it non-destructive stretch and squeeze, but we have station-specific normalization at the individual station playout. Again, keeping things consistent across the board. That makes sense as well? Cool. Any questions about it, just feel free, as I said, raise your hand, chime in, all of that. So, and by the way, the same applies to our Zeta to Go workflow. So when we're talking about doing this auto load, looking at your audio, the marks analysis, that's all done at the server level. So if we apply that audio to Zeta to Go, it still gets saved. It still gets the marks analysis if you wanted to down at the local level. So we have essentially the traditional Zeta cluster, right? This is, again, there's many different combinations of this, but I wanted to keep it truly just very simplistic and then start to build on. So we have essentially that Zeta server. That's where SQL resides in the rack room. We might have a production or traffic or programming server as well. And then we have something in here where essentially it's a sequencer server, right? It's in charge of the physical playout. This could be as complicated or simple as you want it to be, right? Many traditional, advanced configurations have that sequencer server in the middle. That's in charge of all of the playout, right? But that still means if you have the on-air studio, we can run essentially any logs or audio individually on those on-airs as well. As I said, this is traditional, but we can scale it at any kind of which way you wanted to do it. And then, by the way, with Zeta to Go, we also incorporate any of these remote workflows into the mix. Just in case you're wondering, Zeta to Go is essentially a service that runs off a machine somewhere in this environment, usually on the SQL server. That's usually where it resides, or one of the sequencer servers, right? So we take that traditional studio setup. Now, I want you to apply essentially market A and market B, facility A and facility B. What we're doing here now is we're taking that traditional setup, what you need in market A, and how do we connect that to market B, right? How do we maximize our staff so we have multiple markets that are in sync with one another, right? So for that, we kind of had these enterprise solutions. And again, we have stations that use all this, some of this, or none of this. It's really on how you want to envision this, right? So we talk about sharing audio, metadata, schedules, voice tracks. The idea is that we have Zeta to Go, right? So let's use essentially a corporate domain with market A and market B. With Zeta to Go, it's just a URL that requires some type of VPN security. We say VPN because it's the most traditional. But if there's something unique you guys want to implement, we totally can. But we've just found, again, from our experience, VPN is just both easier to say and also have users implement. So if I am in market A and I'm in my studio, right? I'm on the same corporate domain. That means that if I'm in-house, I have access to the corporate domain, which means I have access in theory to another Zeta market. If I do, well, then what I can do is essentially I can have multiple Zeta to Go's in my browser. Zeta to Go is a true URL. It maintains the usernames and passwords as you would in Zeta. And by the way, if Zeta does utilize Active Directory, we can do that too inside of Zeta. Just be aware, we just use the login information for the Active Directory. Zeta itself houses its own rights and security issues, or security, I guess, permissions. So essentially, I could be in my studio in market A. I can have market B, market C, market D with Zeta to go. I don't have to worry about a VPN because I'm on the corporate domain. I then have my local, right? So market B would have a Nate login, or I'll pick on Anne-Marie here because she's next to me. You know, you might have an Anne-Marie login in market C, market D, so on and so forth, which is technically different than your market A Anne-Marie login, right? But you have access to all of those live environments. So the idea here is that I can use Zeta to go to have my midday person on market A voice track weekends on market B, and have market B's midday person voice track weekends on market A, right? And it's a quick, easy tool because all I'm doing, if I'm going to voice track my weekend shift, is I just go to the different URL, right? You know, Zeta to go / market A / market B. So on those lines. The other options we have here are site replication and Zcast. They kind of work almost hand in hand in the idea that site replication is the we activity, right? We both are stations that need to be connected 100%. If I do any audio, schedule, metadata changes in market A, I need to send that to market B, or usually more common is a disaster facility off-site, right? So we have a server A in the primary location. We have server B usually in the transmitter site. We want to keep both those servers, in sync. So we create a site replication, a we relationship. We are together fully in sync. Limitations there are, of course, bandwidth, right? If you are in the middle of nowhere, we might have a bandwidth conversation. That's also how we work with our Zetta Cloud-based disaster recovery. Instead of having a linear market left to right, we go vertically up into a cloud, which, by the way, Zetta Cloud, you'll hear me say, is written for and on AWS, following best practices and securities. We actually have a container that the software is written on. It is not a VM for Zetta Cloud-based disaster recovery, but we do utilize site replication from the local server level to replicate all the information to the cloud. Then we have Zcast. Zcast is a little bit different. Zcast is you need this. What is this you need? Well, I can make it automatic. I can make it manual. It's your choice. I'm seeing a lot of sites that I've been working with. They've started utilizing their HD2 formats in 3 and 4. What they were doing is they don't need an entire staff dedicated to an HD3. They just don't need it. So what they're doing is they're utilizing a combination of our Zcast and this, we call it S3, a scheduled subscription service. That's a music scheduler functionality part of G Selector. The idea that we create one music log, we have a champion music format captain. They do the music log, they send it out. And then the Zcast, we then send via Zcast the audio for those assets to the other sister station. So what we've been doing is, by the way, that S3, the key about S3 is that it maintains local clock structure and local imaging, right? So what they're doing is market A's HD2, the format, the music logs is being Zcasted over to market B for their HD2. However, market B's own staff is maintaining the imaging and the voice tracking for that station. So if you notice, it's an HD station. You don't need to have that many people heavy lifting on that project. So what they're doing is they're essentially bridging the workflow so that one person does the music logs, adds the audio, Zcasts over automatically. When the other HD2 grabs it in, when it pulls in all the information, they then voice track, have their own imaging, and they have essentially the same music, but on 2 completely different markets. And again, the idea there is Zcast, you need this. Site rep is a we activity. Zcast is pushing to you. So again, you can see we were talking about the facility A, facility B. Other options. This is a huge thing over in Europe, just so you know. It's interesting how the Europe radio market kind of differentiates from here in the States. It's a lot more of, one hub, so to speak, and then a X number of affiliate sites that are surrounding it, right? Because that's kind of how the countries are organized over in the EU. So what we can do here essentially is we can have called Zeta splits. The idea that we have one automation that's happening in-house and we split away to an X number of secondary sequencers, right? What are those secondary sequencers? Traditionally here in the States, they're usually like during a sporting event, you don't have the rights to stream, let's say a Mets game or whatever it is. So you would have, for the terrestrial signal, you would have the primary network feed, and then you would have to do a split for the internet stream only to have some type of secondary product that is approved for internet streaming. The beauty about Zeta splits is that you can define anything as a Zeta split. So for example, if you wanted to have, music be the thing that you're splitting away from, fine. If you want imaging, fine. The idea here is we have a split behavior. From the parent site, we define what this is, and then of course, we let you go on your merry way. I should point out, by the way, that these are all, obviously very complex things, which are great. They're all commercial grade, solutions to our clients. I don't expect you to memorize all this. However, I will show you the end of this. There are free resources that we have. One of the things that I've been doing, especially when COVID first happened, was, in my opinion, worrying about music logs should be the last thing you have to worry about during COVID. And so what I started doing was these open office hours that really took off, and we had a lot of our clients love it, which is great. I'm a big proponent of, how do you know how to do something if no one told you it existed, right? So the idea is that we want to spread knowledge of our products, but also make it so that if there is a better workflow for you and your team, we want to show you those workflows. So we have a thing called RCS Live, and we have an RCS Live archive. I'm going to show you as I wrap up all of this. I'll show you what it looks like. But just so you know, these are all topics that are featured as part of RCS Live. So if you see something here that you're like, wow, I really am curious about that, I would love to have Nate dive further into it. The answer is most likely yes. It is probably a video I've done online that I will point you in the right direction. And just so you guys know, I can also attach my email here. I know probably Tom has as well. If you have any questions at this, you want to follow up afterwards, definitely feel free to email me. I love answering user questions. So if you have any kind of questions or any user workflows, definitely throw them my way. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. Worst case scenario, you'll get, hey, give a buzz to support. But that's like the worst case scenario. And of course, we talked earlier about Zeta to go, HTML5, browser based. Again, none of this VM or any of that stuff. This is a service that's a URL that runs associated with your Zeta environment. I always tell users, Zeta to go is made to enhance, not replace the Zeta experience. It's important to note because some users are like, okay, well, I have Zeta to go. I'll just run everything on Zeta to go. It's going to be very similar to that of Zetta Cloud, right? The idea here is that there's a lot of different types of workflows for different users. Right now for Zetta Cloud, we don't have, let's say, the GPIOs and audio routing yet, right? We're building it right now as we speak. Those are things that are made to enhance, not replace the Zeta experience. So then we have, we said it earlier, kind of briefly touched base on this, the Zeta cluster network. Remember, we have traditional setup, market A, market B, using things like Zcast and SiteRep to connect the two markets, utilizing Zeta to go for quick, easy voice tracking. But then we have some, corporate cluster, right? Talking about having format centers, the idea that we have format captains that add the audio into the format center. That format center then Zcasts it, right? You need this information, not a SiteRep, which is a we, right? This is a format center. So the idea is that I add this audio as the format captain, do my marks analysis, save it in the format center. That format center has an automatic function that says if I have new audio, I got to send it to this number of affiliate sites. And then, of course, we send the Zcast over. And then if we have the same thing in regards to G-Selector's S3 music schedule, all of a sudden we have a format center for Zeta, we have a format center for G-Selector, and we have essentially format captains that go to those locations to do their work. That could be as big of a scale as you want it to be. We have some clients that have Amazon AWS machines that are actually dedicated to these servers. The one thing you have to note, by the way, and I always say this to our clients, if it was easy and cheap, everyone would be doing it, right? Don't forget that. Especially with cloud, if it was easy and cheap, everyone would already have it. It would already be done. But there is, depending on how many users you have, we have found that if you're doing this format center, so to speak, they have like 30 users who access this, and they're all working at like the same exact time. And so those are things they use Amazon's app stream as the middleman to kind of go and make sure that they're in there. So just so you know, that's also a possibility, depending on how big of a scale of a project we're talking about here. And of course, that the biggest thing there is localization, right? Make sure that you're still local, maintain your imaging, your traffic log, that's all in there as well, right? So then we start getting into the Zetta Cloud environment, right? So what is Zetta Cloud? I said earlier, it's written for and on AWS, following the best practices and securities. And so what you have here essentially is on the left here, this is my actual Zetta Cloud itself. It's all module based, very similar to that of traditional Zetta, where essentially you have each module serves a purpose of the on-air playout. And we have here is every Zetta Cloud has an encoder built into it. That's how we get the playout, right? So if you have any type of local device, if you're on your phone and you go to, again, the URL, it's going to be whatever your microphone source is. If you're in your computer like mine, I got a little DBX with a Focusrite USB interface. That's what I have as a Windows default. That's what I'm recording with my Zetta Cloud, right? All this goes to our internet codec for the playout, and then it goes to the program audio, wherever that may be. Right now, Zetta Cloud is in Zetta Cloud-based disaster recovery. The idea is that we can enable this during disaster purposes. That's the idea. Not per se 24/7 playout, though that is coming down the pipeline. We do have some clients that do utilize that feature, but obviously it's more geared towards music-focused stations because of the nature of, the early stages of Zetta Cloud and all its features. So the program audio usually is going to go to a destination for recovery purposes. So transmitter sites. I know many transmitters these days have essentially an option for a backup URL. You can easily configure the two of those there, or you can get it nice in advance and you can do a reverse engineer on the Zetta Cloud encoder, send that to our Revma, and then have essentially the content delivery network take over. And you have essentially that one stream turns into 6 streams. And where do those 6 streams go? You tell us. I had one engineer who went to me and he's like, hey, can we do a unique configuration for disaster recovery? They had a deal with their competitors where both of them had a little studio in the corner of the building so that if one of them went off the air, they could jump and use the other competitor's studio. Very interesting stuff, but great. And so he was asking, well, if I need some type of UI interface, could I take Zetta Cloud, put the stream on a Barracks box, put the Barracks box, attach it to a board, and then have that pot have the Zetta Cloud, right, which has, of course, audio and the schedules and all of that. But then my board playout goes to the transmitter site. And I was like, absolutely, you can definitely do that. Just be careful of the Barracks and figure out if that works properly for streaming. But also, they had that studio. They had the luxury of having that studio. So whatever you do with that program audio from the encoder level, it's really on you. That's the beauty of it, right? Pretty flexible. So now we start encompassing some of our Zetta Cloud hybrid networks, right? We have the traditional facility. We have the regional facility. Then we have Zetta Cloud to incorporate that. So you can see here, I have my main cluster facility with all my stations inside of it. Those get fed to my regional, cluster facilities. And this could be, again, as complex or as simple as you want it to be. If I have the main cluster facility, what is that main cluster facility? Is that a format center and all of your regionals have their own regionals? Or is it just a true, we have just 5 stations, it's just our single market? Then great, then we'll have the main cluster with our servers, then we'll have just any type of Zetta Cloud site rep in there. And that, again, the site replication is what we have as the local traditional environment to connect that to Zetta Cloud. And once we have the Zetta Cloud environment, there are some capabilities going back to the main cluster facility. One of the things that we did, we're very proud of our development team here at RCS. We have 10 plus people who are dedicated to each product that we offer. And the beauty is that we do about 2 to 3 releases a year. And those are at this stage in the game, pretty enhancement rich. And so because we have the flexibility of that staff, when COVID first hit, one of the biggest things that we got was, I don't trust, I'm going to pick on Vinny here because he's to my left. I don't trust Vinny. It's nothing against Vinny. I just don't trust him. I don't want to give Vinny a VPN. Right? Well, that's on you. We always try to cater to your environment, right? And your network, your virus, all that's a virus software, all of that. So, okay, you don't want Vinny to have VPN. Fine. But then you're like, but Vinny needs to voice track his midday shift across the board. How can we make that work? Right? Well, we need some type of VPN. But if we don't have a VPN, what we did is we reverse engineered a empty voice track in Zetta Cloud. If you're following the Zeta replication, we create an asset, we create a schedule, any changes, even as simple as changing a segue from segue to stop chain, right? If we do that, that's a change in the environment. We're sending that change across to our Amazon Web Service instance. And so then from there, what we can do is if we send an empty voice track to Zetta Cloud, we built in the technology so that if I record in Zetta Cloud, that empty or voice track, it's going to get sent back to our main cluster facility. And because Zetta Cloud has its own Okta email and password authentication outside of the traditional Zetta environment, Vinny doesn't need to get a VPN because Vinny gets an email and a password on the Zetta Cloud network that he then logs on. He voice tracks in empty voice track slots. That gets sent back to your Zetta. And now Vinny's got the voice track shift. And for the IT and engineering, we never gave him a VPN. This is, of course, huge for colleges and universities as well. Any questions at all by any chance, guys and gals? No? Okay. I'll chug along here. So that's actually, the kind of wrap of that portion over here. So what I like to do is I want to showcase over here. Click that. So a couple things here. This is our Zetta Cloud environment. So I just want to show you how it has. Boom. A second. Remember my password here for this one. As that loads up, I also want to show you this right here. So this is an URL, and I can either send this out or post it here. There's a couple different locations to get here. This is our rcsworks.com/rcs-live. That's what this is right here. And so it is a collection of all of our videos, right? And they range from multiple topics. The idea here is that we want to give you the tools and resources to know a better understanding of certain topics. Like, what is a Zetta hot spare? What's the purpose of that? A Zetta hot spare is a way of not moving machines for backup purposes, but moving actual play devices. If I am my station and I play on the board pots 1, 2, and 3, the idea for Zetta hot spare is I want to have those play devices on 7, 8, 9. Where is 7, 8, 9 located? On an audio over IP network? You tell us. But I can hit a hotkey that has a macro that then says activate my hot spare, and now all of your play out, which was on 1, 2, and 3, is now on 7, 8, 9, wherever that board is as well. Does that pertain to you, Gary? It might not. That's up to you. We have, like, for example, new features that are coming out in the software, right? That'd be a nice little thing to see. So you can see this is all the videos we've done. I've done interviews with RCS, VPs and stuff like that. But there's revisiting Zetta Cloud-based disaster recoveries in here. There's tons and tons of videos that I've done all throughout COVID as well. If there's a particular video that you're looking to get more information on, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to me. If there's a topic you want covered, let me know as well. That's in there. We also have a certain thing. One of the things you can do here is you go to the rcsworks.com and go to the blog section here on the top right. You can see for every one of these videos, I am fully aware that our time is valuable. And sometimes you need to look at something and say within 2-3 minutes, you know what, it's not going to pertain to me, or it is. It's going to be up to me. And we can do is we can have Zetta's, I wrote a blog for each one of these sections. which by the way include some configuration settings. Like, so for example, you can see here, we were talking about how to add plugins in Zeta's multi-track editor, right? Where do I enable that? So what I want to do is I want to have the user look at this, say, you know what, this might pertain to me. It might not. Let me read up about it. Oh, this is exactly what I want. I can then watch the video. Or if I read about it and say, okay, I get the gist. I don't need to watch that video. But I know that in the blog section, Nate mentioned how to enable that setting. You'll know it's here. So down the road, you can go back to reference the RCS Live, and you can essentially say, okay, where's that video? There it is. And there's that configuration setting. And so just so you guys know, if I go to rcsworks.com, it's the blog section up here. Otherwise, I can go to rcsworks.com. It's just RCS-live. It's actually one of the links buried inside the blog, which is why I always go to it directly. And again, if you have any questions on these, all you have to do is you can highlight the actual video here, right-click and copy. If you go to the little search bar up here, I can paste this in. It'll be the first results that pop up. Again, any questions, feel free to email me, and I'll put my email right here. That's my email there. I just put in the chat. So in case you ever wanted to poke me there, you can definitely feel free to do so. And you can see here, that's the very first one that pops up is this G-Starter Kicks grade and contact group settings. That's in there too. Okay. So in regards to the Zetta Cloud, so just kind of a brief, we got some time here. So again, this is Zetta Cloud. Now you're going to be asking it, and I know the answer. Nate, why can't I broadcast live 24/7? And I said it earlier. It's about the format, and it's about what you utilize for, right? So again, for right now, macros, GPOs are not technically built into Zetta Cloud yet. So if you're a news talk format, yeah, the disaster recovery on-air portion might not pertain to you. However, don't forget the importance of having all of your audio, your metadata, your SQL backups all being sent to essentially a Amazon Web Service bucket that we have for you. And again, this is not a VM. This is written on and for AWS. And so we have our software written on that. We would give you essentially, your allotted storage. As part of the Zetta Cloud contract, we ask you how much storage do you need? And we sell it in 500 gig instances, just so you know. That's for your audio. But fire in the studio, whatever it may be, the big thing right now is cryptoware, right? The idea is that if you have a cryptoware attack, the idea is that you want to instantly unplug your system and you want to assess the situation, but you need to be on the air. You got to pay those commercials, which is why you go to your phone. You then go to us.zettacloud.com. You got Vinny's username and password there, right? And then after that, what you do is you essentially log in. You enable the Zetta Cloud playout. It's always going to be kind of running in the background. The sequencer is not going to be playing, right? It's going to be kind of armed versus activate. That's the idea. It's going to be armed 24/7. You tell us when you want to activate it. At that point in time, you have literally where your log is. It's kind of running usually about per the hour. So yeah, you want to make sure you want to line up that hour wherever you left off. But all of your audio is there. All of your schedules are there. And you can continue to add audio, voice track, and make new logs here as well. So that's the beauty about Zetta Cloud. Any questions what I just said there by any chance? Nope. Okay. And by the way, this is constantly evolving. Every month, we got a new little build that we release on there. It is done automatically. We, of course, test it in our development environment and then release it to the public. And so everything here is module-based. We have layouts. So you can see that I have just different layouts in here. I have different modules I can open. The on-air module is just that. It's the on-air sequencer. Playlist is my logs. I follow along with there. I have my library, voice tracker, system monitor, and some hotkeys I'll show you in a second here as well. But the idea is that this is the on-air station. This is my actual playout. And if I go to the station and loading the stations on here, you will see that I have my players right here. We can have multiple players if you wanted to. So if you had multiple, let's say a primary feed and a secondary feed, you can do that here. You can also have devices. We had some clients that were looking into having some type of, let's say we're working with Sound 4, having a self-contained playout device where essentially you download the logs and the audio, and then you can go offline and it just plays the log exactly as is. So for example, if you're in a very rural area, you could in theory load that device with 30 days worth of music logs, and then it will just play everything in order as is, internet or no internet, as long as it can, of course, first download those things there. From there, this is that encoder we talked about earlier. I have mine as kind of reverse here, where I kind of threw it over to Revma, but we do have an option for the encoding here. As you can see, those are our encoder outputs, as well as the bit rates that are there as well. That's in this here too. And we had the live metadata playing is there, some audio settings in here. We have some fade out, normalization, ETM, stretch and squeezed. There's also the concept of emergency playlists and emergency tags inside of Zetta Cloud. The emergency playlist is, just that, right? Somebody doesn't do a music playlist and send it to you for whatever reason. We do have some complex, some advanced features where we can actually go and grab a log from G-Selector if we wanted it to. But if you're in a short-term bind or somebody doesn't do what they're supposed to do, we could go and define emergency playlists, grab that, have that on the air as well. That might be something if you have, let's say, a news talk format or something, you need a stock, generic content. That might be something, the emergency playlist you want to utilize there. By the way, just with all of the other products we have, everything in Zetta and G-Selector is all enterprise, which means that every module can access any of the stations inside of that database. It's important to note because you can have more than one of the same module open looking at different stations, or multiple modules with the same station open if you wanted to do that as well, right? So everything here is essentially show me the setup, the layout, I should say, show me what stations I'm accessing. And if you have, let's say, a producer, or I kind of called the Sunday night board op, the last person standing, they're going to have essentially, they can have all 3 on-air sequencers open with 3 logs, and they can monitor 3 different feeds at the same exact time if they wanted to do that. So on-air sequencer here, stop, play, pause, segue chains, those are pretty much in there. We have the playlist down below. Again, we can have access any number of days in the past or the future that we want. We can also toggle between days here as well. We do load everything just like Zetta to go. We do want to put performance and bandwidth above everything else, because obviously if we had, let's say, load, we load every playlist hour by hour. If we had to go and open the log module and essentially we had to download 24/7 worth of logs and metadata, that's a lot of bandwidth for, especially if, let's say, Vinny just needs to voice track his shift. That's it. That's a lot of bandwidth we're downloading. So you'll see all throughout the software, there's ways to maximize bandwidth and performance. How many items per page in the library, right? How many do you see how many are displayed in there? So again, here is our playlist down below. Our library here on the bottom right. And then, of course, if I double click on one of these elements here, it will load up the asset card. You can see that I have options to download the audio locally. This performs the same exact way here as it does over in Zetta Cloud. And then you can see I can download this audio. Let's go to download everything. I have my WAV file. I can set my marks in here. I have some extra metadata. I also have some station specific data here if I wanted to activate it for one particular station. That's in there as well. Everybody see all that? Cool. And just to show you here, there are options where I can insert events or insert voice tracks wherever I want inside of Zetta Cloud. Just be aware, if you're going back to that Vinny example I gave earlier, we want to essentially voice track with empty voice tracks from Zetta Cloud. That gets sent back. Otherwise, we're just voice tracking anything at any given time. It will play out here on the Zetta Cloud encoder. We also have system monitor here and also the hotkeys down below. Hotkeys are straightforward. Again, they're just audio, drag and drop. You can create your hotkeys over here, play them out on the audio source. If it's on the air, it's on the air. Otherwise, we control it for kind of off-air purposes in voice tracking here with some sliders there. And then this, the system monitor serves 2 purposes. Number one, we want to see the storage, right? See how much you're using. That's going to go back to the whole idea of, remember, 500 gigs of storage in bulk, depending on how much audio you have. And then this is where you'd essentially go to deploy the encoder, right? Talking about the ARM versus the activate. That's what you do here. So if you're an engineer, you would go to your Zetta to go, or sorry, your Zetta Cloud-based disaster recovery. You would log in with your email, your password. You would then go and then you would make it online available and then enable the sequencer and you're good to go. Of course, again, ARM versus Activate. It's going to be running in tandem with all your changes. It's just going to wait for you to say, okay, now the sequencer's live. And for us, for billing purposes, that's really when you're going to get, we offer some time every month for you to test it and for emergency purposes. But if you're, let's say, doing a long form, you're going to be using it for 8 hours, 10 hours. Obviously that's what you're paying for is the playback, right? That's the idea. Same thing with an encoder or with a streaming company. Same exact idea. So yeah, any questions on there? I try to give myself about 40 minutes or so here. I think I'm right around where I started there. And again, just because it's me, I'm being a little selfish, but also I think it's a great resource. This RCS Live archive is phenomenal because again, it's just all free resources of just us talking. You, for example, here, this is a great video that Brian, Jeff, and I, Brian is the head of field technician services of installs here at RCS. Jeff is our senior sales engineer. And we were just talking about, news talk formats, unique configurations, unique tips and tricks or settings or macros you can do. Because again, how do you know how to do something if no one told you it existed? Right? Any questions, Vinny? I know I saw you turn your mic off there. Any questions for me at all?
No, not really.
Awesome. I think that's what I got from my time, Tom, unless you want me to roll on here, but. Ooh.
Oh, he sounds wonderful. You
Yeah,
sound
you can't even get the mic in. I'm curious, Tom. So there's for all those who are on here, the Zoom-ism. I've noticed that if you have a little bit of a digital clip in your Zoom, it happens over time. I can't seem to pinpoint why it does it. But if you go to your microphone source, the microphone next to the video button, and you literally from that drop down, just choose any other device and then go back to original device, I have found that half the time it does the trick. But yours is pretty bad, Tom. No offense.
Check. That's a different device. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, really well.
Back to my head.
Switch it
Gone
back
again.
Yeah, that went bad.
Crush your headphones tonight. That's better?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, for everybody out there, I first saw Nate's presentation at the Chapter 37 meeting. Was it 2 months ago?
Yeah, something
Nate?
like that.
And thought that'd be of interest to everybody here. I'm not in radio, but I found it very interesting because last time I was in radio was 1975 in college with Chris Onan, who worked at RCS at one time. And far cry from slip queuing turntables and playing cards.
So hopefully the biggest thing you got away from this is talking about how the hybrid network, right? The idea that you take the traditional studio, you customize it for that market, then you take that market and you connect it with this market. You take those markets, connect it with something like a format center, or we use some type of Zetta Cloud hybrid network to incorporate those workflows. So again, my big spiel has been compounded remote hybrid workflows, right? And again, talking about like in Zetta To Go, for example, you can add macros. For example, one of our users, he publishes 25 podcasts, essentially 5 podcasts to 5 different locations, across the board. And so he actually has we configured it so automatically we take what's in his log, we then record it, put it down, mix it down to a file. That file is then sent to an automated task. That automated task exports it from Zetta to a desired location. And he has essentially 5 different podcasts going to 5 different locations. We attach that to a hotkey, and that is a non-audio hotkey that when triggered from Zetta To Go will then export all of those podcasts. So we start in the Zeta environment and then we execute in the Zeta to go environment. Again, doing all this automatically and remotely from the comfort of your home.
Very cool. We have a quiet group tonight. Well, thank you, Nate. If there aren't any other questions, or any questions,
Anybody else? No? Okay. Now I'll stop sharing my screen here there.
okay.
And yes, and please, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions or workflows or all of that good stuff.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming out, Nate, and thanks to everybody for coming out tonight. Appreciate you attending these meetings. Hopefully someday soon we'll be able to do in person again. But in the meantime, if you have program ideas you'd like to see at our meetings, then please email me. You can find my address if you don't have it up on the chapter website, and just let me know what you're interested in seeing at our meetings. I'd be happy to put together a presentation for you.
Cool.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks. Good night.
Night.